Steadily it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict. I'm going to hit you guys with another video, kind of changing my setup here a little bit to use my nicer microphone. So hopefully the audio will come across better for everyone. What I'm going to do is share my screen. And let's jump over here to this 65 Lincoln Continental Convertible listing review. And basically, this one is a live auction. So I know often I was trying to do these real time or prior to the sale, and that's still kind of the goal. Sometimes I go back and do these after the fact, but let's dive right into this thing. I'm going to look over at what I prepared so we can take a look at this listing review. So it's a 65 Lincoln Continental Convertible. If we break down the numbers and tally, there were just over 40,000 built for the 65 model year, 3,356 total convertibles. I just pulled this screenshot from Hagerty. Of course, I'm a Hagerty customer, no affiliation with them in terms of sponsorship, but because I can log in, I have access to search 65 Lincoln Continental, and you can see the price range. The price ranges from 25 all the way to 105. Now, they typically will also say a little bit more for an air-conditioned car. This one is not, so we don't have to really factor that in. The listing details are pretty basic. This is what we see on the Bring a Trailer listing that we're going to jump back to. It is not in the Lincoln registry. So that's nothing that we have to worry about there. I did check that. Now we can see here it is in Parker, Colorado. Basic stuff, black vinyl upholstery. That's what it looks like as well. This person has had this car since 2016. We can see that it's white. It has the wider white wall, which I totally get. Not everyone is a fan of, especially the purists in this era. The factory white walls were not this wide, so I totally get it. So I understand some of the concern there. But I always tell people the tires are kind of like painting the walls of a house, right? You just go buy another set of tires. It's not the end of the world. We will look back here at some of the things I like about this, but I did want to show you a little bit about the car. You can see not too bad of an engine bay. We'll hit upon some of the key things that I noticed. We can see the VIN plate here. And again, bringatrailer.com. They break this stuff down. We can see it is an Oakland, California DSO, which is the district ordering office, or I call it district sales office for the most part. Let's see if I can hide that. It's annoying there. So we know it's the original color with the white with the black is really the key. Now, when we look at this car, I kind of went through these the other day. You'll see that it's not perfect. There's dents and dings, and I think Bring a Trailer does a good job of highlighting or, walking the customer through, making sure that they either supply photos or when the person goes out, that they obtain photos, which is going to showcase the car in its true form. These are areas up here. This is a good low angle photo. These are the type of areas you always want to check if you're in person to see, is there any kind of mud up in here in terms of body filler and things like that. It's kind of hard to tell. We can see this light needs a little bit better alignment. It should be very tight up to here. No telling what that could be. It could just be, could have been in an accident. You just never know. You can see here, I mean, these gaps, you don't typically see those in these cars, and you can see this is a little mangled in here. Again, not any deal breakers so far. I think one of the key things is you have to decide when you're buying one of these cars how much do you want to just get in, turn the key, and drive it. You can see here with the way the chrome looks, you could polish this, but you're probably not going to have the results if you want a shiny piece of chrome. So, you'll end up oftentimes needing to re-chrome some of these things. And if that's your intention, you want to find a place that you can trust. I use Advanced Plating in Tennessee. They're, like, in my opinion, the best of the business. They're not the cheapest, but they are really, really good. You can see their door moldings are not there, but they're here on this side. And again, they're showcasing that, like, this is not a perfect car. This is probably driver quality. Certainly not here to nitpick, but I do love that they share these photos. I mean, that's really the key thing. Show us, so that if I can't go or you can't go, um, this gives you a little bit of indication. But in here, it's kind of hard to tell. Did someone come in here? Was this rusty at one point? Um, you see a few little marks here. You just never know. Um, these package trays, as they're often referred to as, they're known to kind of rust a little bit. And again, they're showcasing a lot of this stuff. Now, if we jump back over to my little presentation here, what I want to reinforce is, again, it's a 65. You guys know the first letter or number rather, that I've kind of talked about, that indicates it's a 65, and it's all the same stuff here. The only thing that I would hone in on is it is 12,243. So that's the last 5 digits. That means it was the 12,243rd built out of, which I showed earlier, 40,230. That makes it a little bit earlier production, because production ran for 65 model year from late August 64 to early July 65. And that was kind of that time period. It did shift a little bit each year, but basically we can look here and we see the K indicates October. 03 is the day of the month. So October 3rd, not 65, but 1964, because again, they had started that production in August of 64. So basically 12,243 built out of 40,230. The pros of this listing, its original color. Now, what I meant by not repainted, I had to take a look or thought process there. Not saying that the car hasn't been repainted, but to me, if a car is like the original color, not that you shouldn't repaint a car, but oftentimes people are looking for the originality. So, if you buy this car and you want to keep it original, you could repaint it white. It's going to be a little bit easier. You're not going to have as much to potentially do on the door jambs and all that to do a full color change. But certainly someone may buy this car and want to do a resto mod and paint it black. Certainly that's something that they could do. The DSO is California. Some accessories noted, which I'm going to go back to. It seems like a mostly complete car. Under the car looks solid from the photos that we have. So if we jump back here and let's look at the interior and talk about what accessories do we see. So number one, we see right here, it has a tilt column. So anytime that you see between these 4 pods for your gauges and you see this little line here, we'll see a better photo in a moment. That is an indicator of the levels where the steering column is at. Okay, that has nothing to do with the gears. Now, or in terms of the transmission. And then there's this button right here that you press. And if this is working, then basically the column is vacuum controlled and it kind of goes up and down. I think we have a better photo here. That is, some people will say 10% of the cars or less had tilt column. Unfortunately, the records were destroyed, is my understanding from everything I've been told. And we don't know exactly, but I'd say 10% or less. But you can see here, mine works in my 65. It was first available in 64. And this, again, it's nice if you're a bigger person, maybe a taller person. It's nice to be able to just push that button and click your column up or down. I usually keep mine like around 4 or 3, just kind of in the center. And it's certainly a nice option to have. Now, the other options that we see is this is an AM FM radio. May not be that big a deal, but if you weren't looking to do a sound system or any kind of aftermarket, even hidden stuff, this would be good because you can flip this over to FM. And right here, there are some slight differences in the 64 and 65 radios. I'm not going to go into that, but basically this will flip to FM and these flip over. I should do a video on that in the future on how it works, but that's another feature. Now, something I'd like to point out, I haven't talked a lot about this, but in 65, one of the main differences in the dash is in 64, this little adjuster for the clock basically hangs all the way down, and you just reach under right here and you twist it. So think like daylight saving time. Maybe you had to have the clock repaired and now you have to reset the time. You twist it. And old school people, if you're old school or you grew up in that era, you know that you had to do that. Same thing with some of your home clocks, right? But in 65 it changes, and there's this little hole, so when you put this whole bezel back on, you end up you have to, the little adjuster, if you will, or whatever it's called, that comes right through that hole, and then you've got your little piece there that you twist, and that's how you change the clock. So that's a little different. This is not factory, so that's one thing that I'll kind of point out. There's a couple things that aren't perfect on this car, but certainly that's okay. You can always fix that. The other thing is that I thought I remember seeing speed control. Maybe I'm thinking of a different car. Yeah, if it would have had speed control, it would have been right here because I didn't see it under the dash. You'll sometimes see it. It changes a little bit throughout the years, but basically, we know it's a non-AC car. So the other difference in 64 and 65, if it's a non-AC car, you will not have the vents here. Okay, so I know you're thinking, well, what about the heater? The heater only comes out under the dash vents. So if you lived in a cool place and you're like, hey, we'll put our hoodies on and go for a nighttime cruise, the heater, if it's working, is going to come out down here, but it's not going to be, coming out up in this area. So it's just something to kind of point out. Not that it's different with an air conditioned car, but just something to think about. So non-AC car, 65 has the adjuster for the clock here. It has the AM FM, and it has the tilt column. So that's what we can kind of see from that. Now, if we jump in the engine bay, and I'll kind of show you, I want to make sure I hit upon all this stuff. If we look under the car, there's not a ton of photos, but when I look at this photo, I kind of see the originality. I kind of see something, nothing that like is worrisome. Even these fuel lines right here, they look like they're undisturbed, right? They've been that way. A car underneath that, like one of these Lincolns that looks like this, to me, is not bad. I mean, this is the way they often look, depending on where the car, has been the last, however many years running and driving or whatever. So again, there's not a lot of photos, but I always would say that, if I was here, I would want to just make sure, we can't see up underneath here perfectly, making sure there's no weak spots. Don't be worried if there are some little areas. On my 64, I definitely have to have some little pieces fixed on the floorboards. May not need a whole floor pan, but you just want to make sure that there's not a lot of rust on these cars. And from what I can kind of tell here, there's not, which is kind of a good thing. If we jump back over here and we look at things to consider. So we're going to look at the engine bay here in just a moment and then wrap this up. It's a non-AC car. Again, it's not a deal breaker, especially with the convertible. A lot of people would say, well, even with the air condition blowing, if the top is down, I mean, it kind of cools you off a little bit, but it just kind of goes right by the wayside. It's nice to have it if you have it, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. There are some minor things that are not correct under the hood, nothing that can't be corrected, so we'll look at that. The top, they say, is not currently working. They did mention, I think in the comments, that it worked for 7 years and they never had an issue, and then all of a sudden recently it stopped working. So it could be something simple, probably is. But of course, if you're looking to buy a car and spend 30, 40, 50,000 plus, you don't want to have it delivered and be like, wow, the windows don't work, the top doesn't work, and whatnot. Someone needs to jump one of the relays to unlock and then open the deck lid and kind of get in there and see what's going on. It could be a limit switch. Typically all of that stuff I send to Blair Farmer. He's been in the Florida area for 40 plus years working on these cars. Tony Bolin, he's another option, Lincoln Land, of course, but they're very, very busy. The body's not perfect. However, it's called out in the description by Bring a Trailer. Can't see in the trunk. Do the auto drops work? So again, those are things to consider. We'll look back at those photos in a minute. Really, my conclusion is this could be a good car to get into if you're looking for like the right price point because of the things that I talked about. If the top worked for 7+ years without an issue, it's probably something easy. Could be a relay or a limit switch, as I mentioned. You have to kind of learn some of this stuff because if you own one of these cars, and God forbid, I know I've been places and you get a little stressed and you're like, wow, I'm at a place and some rain's coming. You want to be able to put your top up, right? So, a lot of times in the Lincoln forums, they'll talk about, get one of the manuals that shows you a few of the steps, learn how to maybe jump a relay to close your deck lid or do those kind of things. That stuff would help you, especially if you're this guy and like maybe the top is stuck down and you're somewhere. But again, just going back to it, trying to keep it simple. This potentially is an easy fix. We'd have to see. Now, under the hood, a non-AC car, I'm pretty certain they did not come with a fan shroud. And I know this is always a bone of contention, but this one's throwing me off because it has a fan shroud. Now, it could have a fan shroud because if this car was in an area or, like, let's say the person had overheating problems and then someone comes along that says, hey, I know why you have an overheating problem. You don't have a fan shroud. Well, I know the earlier years didn't, and I don't believe 65 did. If there's no AC, there's no fan shroud. So, again, non-AC, but there is a fan shroud here, so they probably installed it. We can see it has a single pot reservoir that I would upgrade if possible. The other thing is a California DSO. It had additional emissions. You see this little cap right here? There's a hose. This should go the other way, and that hose should go into this air filter. And it had to do with emissions. I can't break it down on what it did. Blair has explained it to me multiple times. But bottom line is it supposedly helped cut down on emissions. If I have a California car like I do, that's a cool thing because what my guess is that they've changed this air cleaner over time. And the air cleaner is different. So it's harder to find the air cleaner that has the port in it to hook this hose into. So I don't know what they did here. Now, the biggest thing that sticks out, and you may not notice this, a lot of people think Ford blue. This is not the original paint for the engine. So these engines were painted black. That does change later in the 60s, but bottom line is that tells me this engine has been out. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to, if it was me and I was looking to buy it, I would want to hear it run and things like that. And if I remember correctly, they do. This is another good thing because I skimmed through these the other day. It's been a couple days, but they do have videos, so that's a fantastic thing. So you want to listen to, does everything sound okay and things like that? Because again, the engine has been painted. My assumption is it has been out. We can also see the air cleaner. Looks like it was blue. It should be black, but again, I don't know why the air cleaner doesn't have the port for this guy over here. In addition to that, this is not factory. So this is your expansion tank. You shouldn't need this additional tank. So this little guy here is kind of an overflow that if this ever did back up, this shoots straight to the, underneath the car and it just goes out that way. But this definitely would go right away if it was my car. Now, in addition, on 64, 65, it is a pain to change this coil. It looks like they've already put on or they've made, they probably got a 66, 67 coil holder. And this is an easy mod. You just get one from those cars, and it's nice because it puts the coil up here, which is way more serviceable. If you've ever tried to change a coil on a 64, 65, maybe even the earlier 61 2s and 3s, I think it's underneath the expansion tank, and it is a pain. So I kind of like that they did that. You can see some little things are changed out here. The voltage regulator you can see is painted blue. It does have the 3-port fuel pump. It does have the shield, which you want to have on there. Blue engine, which we talked about. This is not factory correct. That kind of looks a little weird. You may like it, but I would take that off. You can buy some of the padding and stuff that goes underneath it. If we look back, yeah, I think that's kind of it. I think it sums it up. What do you guys think? It's at 15,000. There are some discussions in the chat area. They talk about the amp gauge, which that's something you have to consider as well. It needs to be bypassed or upgraded for the most part. But there's a little bit of discussion in there kind of about the top not working and whatnot. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing and stay on the rise. We got you.